Okay, so shout out to Patricia Rodriguez for requesting my review on the movie Hard Eyes. If you guys have upcoming movies that you want me to review, let me know in the comments. Okay, now when I went to go see this movie, it was not what I suspected it would be based on the trailer. So what I usually do is I watch the trailer first, gather some very, very basic information like the rating, runtime, budget, and synopsis to prepare for my review. Then I go watch it. My expectations were definitely subverted, but I don't exactly mean that in a good way. We'll discuss everything here in the video, so let's get right into the preliminary hearing. The movie stars Olivia Holt, who was in... Alright, and we got Mason Gooding, who was in the movie Fall and the latest Scream movies. So the IMDb synopsis reads, for the past several years, the Hard Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. This Valentine's Day, no couple is safe. So actually a pretty unique take on a serial killer movie, or at least I haven't seen this before. I suspected that the motive of the killer was that he was just jilted, he's a fucking loser who can't get them bitches. So seeing couples on Valentine's Day triggers him, but again, they definitely subverted my expectations with that, but we'll talk about all that later, like I said. The film is rated R and has a runtime of 97 minutes. Imagine my shock with the last few reviews I've done, and then a budget of $18 million. I only saw one trailer and it was really well done. It looked cool, it flowed really well, and I knew what the story would be about. What I didn't gather from the trailer is the amount of comedy in this movie. When I watched the trailer, I saw a horror, romance, crime film. When I watched the movie, I got a horror rom-com basically. I thought the music in the trailer was only supposed to fit the theme of Valentine's Day, but no, it apparently fit the aesthetic of the movie too. The thing about horror comedies with me is that I just really don't like them because the comedy just undermines the horror so much. Like in Happy Death Day, it was an okay movie, but I was so blueballed by the horror factor in both movies because it feels like even the characters realize how funny it is. Now, a movie like Ready or Not is an example of a good horror comedy because the comedy in that movie comes off way less intentional on the characters' part. Unfortunately, Hard Eyes is much the same as the former. The comedy undermines the horror so much that the characters' feelings aren't even really that believable. I guess for whatever reason, I was expecting a better version of the Snowman movie. Anyways, let's just get into the plot before I give too many of my thoughts away. This is the one and only spoiler warning. If you want a spoiler-free final verdict, skip to this time in the video. So we open on a couple at a vineyard. The boyfriend proposes, she says yes, and all of a sudden a short Cupid arrow spears right through the boyfriend's head. We see Hard Eye's masked face. The girl runs away freaking out and hides in a really large grape crusher. Hard Eyes locks her in and uses the machine to crush her. So then we get a montage of some poorly filmed newscasts of TV anchors reporting on this serial killer. A killer who does his killing on or around Valentine's Day, jumping from city to city each year for the last 2 to 3 years, targeting specifically romantic couples. So then we're introduced to Allie, a marketing specialist for a company that does advertising for the romance industry like jewelry, floral, etc. And Allie has recently broken up with her boyfriend and can't get over him because she's constantly looking at his social media photos with his new girlfriend. While at a coffee shop, Allie bumps into a man named Jay. They briefly bond over their similar coffee orders and then part ways to go to work. At work, Allie finds out that she botched one of her projects, so the company brings in a freelancer to help, and Jay, who she bumped into earlier, is that freelancer. Allie becomes cold towards him as she feels like he's taking her job, but they're forced to work together anyways. Jay invites Allie to dinner. Allie thinks it's more of a work dinner, but Jay thinks it's more of a date. While at dinner, Allie just acts kind of like a cunt to Jay the whole time because obviously she fears for her job security, but also because she believes that 99% of all romantic relationships are just temporary experiments. Jay walks out of the restaurant. Allie goes outside to apologize. Then she sees her ex approaching with his new girlfriend, so Allie kisses Jay to make her ex jealous. Allie and Jay then take a cab home, stopping at Allie's place first, but unfortunately she locked herself out, so Jay breaks the window to her apartment building, cuts his hand in the process, and Allie brings him upstairs to her apartment, where she takes care of his hand. After chatting for a little while, Allie opens her closet, and inside is none other than Heart Eyes himself. A big commotion breaks out in her apartment. They all start fighting. Eventually, Allie and Jay are able to escape the building and run away, but Heart Eyes manages to catch up, knocking Jay out. Allie gets chased a bit further, where she catches some luck and a squad of police show up. But when Allie turns around, Heart Eyes is nowhere to be found. The police have seemingly actually apprehended Heart Eyes elsewhere, but they think that Jay is the culprit because while he was knocked out, Heart Eyes planted his mask and weapon on Jay. The detective leading the Seattle Heart Eyes investigation is Janine Shaw, who briefly questions Allie. The police take Jay in for questioning. Allie's trying to convince the records technician that Jay isn't the killer, and then an IT specialist named David pops up from behind the counter, then asks Allie if she wants to go out. She shoots him down, and finally the records technician goes to tell Detective Shaw that Allie is being hysterical. Now, just to hit the pause button for a second, if you thought that me mentioning the IT guy was weirdly random and oddly specific to include in a consolidated plot overview, well, don't you worry, because you are not crazy. I felt crazy myself sitting in the theater and realized how random yet prominent his character was, and I literally just was sitting in my seat and was like, he's literally the killer, out loud. That's what I said. Anyways, the technician and Detective Shaw return. They talk with Allie for a little bit, and then the power goes out. Shaw goes into another room to check on the breaker, and then suddenly Heart Eyes is inside the police station lobby and stabs the records tech. Heart Eyes chases Allie, but it's so dark that it's kind of hard to find her. She's able to escape and finds the adjacent observation room peering into Jay's interview room where he's being held for questioning. She goes to find the key to the room, but before she can, Heart Eyes enters the interview room face to face with Jay. Jay uses the table as sort of a boundary between himself and Heart Eyes. Then before Heart Eyes almost slashes Jay up, Allie shoots through the glass between the two rooms and then shoots at Heart Eyes, missing literally every single shot as Heart Eyes just runs away. The two lovers take the opportunity to leave, but soon see that Heart Eyes is once again on their tail. They make their way to a drive-in movie where there's a bunch of people around, and they hide in some hippie couple's van. The hippie couple start pounding away at each other, obviously in the spirit of Valentine's Day, so the noise tips off Heart Eyes. He brutally maims their heads with some weird sword-looking weapon. Then Allie and Jay essentially just run in a circle around the drive-in movie theater. Allie basically says to Jay that it's their fault for luring Heart Eyes to kill all these innocent people, so it's only right if we stay and stop him. They grab the sword that was used to impale the hippies. Jay takes it and uses it to fight Heart Eyes, who's using the machete. The sword is knocked from Jay's hands, and Heart Eyes knocks Jay out again, and before slashing him up, Allie comes up with a rock and cracks that motherfucker's skull open, and Jay stabs him with the machete, ending his life. Allie and Jay take the mask off, but it's no one that they recognize. They save the day, yay! Allie goes home, and Detective Shaw drives Jay to a hotel so that he can catch a plane the next morning. At her destroyed apartment, Allie realizes that maybe she is in that 1% of people who find true love, and goes to the airport to find Jay before he departs. She gets a mysterious phone call, and it's a cryptic voice on the other line saying that she needs to come to St. Valentine's Church alone or Jay will be killed. So obviously Heart Eyes might not be dead just yet. Allie takes a cab there, and in the sanctuary of the church, Jay is tied by his hands and gagged with a rag. Heart Eyes reveals himself from behind Jay. He takes his mask off, and to the shock of absolutely no one, it's David, the IT guy from earlier. What was a little more surprising, however, was that Detective Shaw also reveals herself to be his accomplice. Apparently it's not a lone killer, but actually a duet who just have a kink for murder. Oh, Jesus Christ, I didn't think it was going to turn out like this. But anyway, we also find out that the guy Jay had killed in the drive-in movie was just a fan of Hard Eyes, and they sent him after Allie and Jay. And you can probably think of a few reasons why this is just kind of stupid. They give Allie the choice to either shoot herself or shoot Jay as a way to test her love for him, even though they've only known each other for less than 24 hours. Abby attempts to shoot Shaw, but the bullet goes through Jay's shoulder while he's kneeling in front of Shaw. The bullet passes through and hits Shaw in the abdomen. David starts freaking out, and Allie takes her chance and charges David. We get a lot of back and forth fighting between the two couples, and eventually Jay manages to stab David in the face with one of his own arrows, and Allie manages to impale Shaw against the sword of St. Valentine's statue, the sword going right through her neck, causing her head to fall off, similar to St. Valentine on February 14th, 269 AD. They basically become the couple who stopped Hard Eyes, and 1 year later, Jay asks Allie to move in with him, but Allie then asks him to marry her. Jesus Christ, I wouldn't put that in the political category, but as someone who believes strongly in traditional gender roles, I was certainly not impressed by that. Anyways, that's when the credits roll. Okay, so I'm going to break this down. I'm going to get all the good stuff out of the way first, and then I'll talk about all the bad stuff. First off, Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding did a great job. They are both great actors, so I gotta hand it to them on that. Their characters were also pretty decent. I had plenty of time to get acquainted with them and just, grow closer to them. It's also another one of those movies that I could just, turn my brain off and just be entertained by all the thrills in the movie. The pacing was spot on. The production design was good. Okay, that was really about it for all the good stuff. Now, here's all the bad stuff. Politics first, so we can get that out of the way. It's not too bad. There's nothing I'm really going to hold against the movie. There's a couple of subtle environmental inserts, like where Abby uses a metal straw, even though she's literally drinking out of a plastic cup. At first, the movie acknowledges how ironic that is, but still they keep pushing it. Like later in the movie, she says, "I'm environmentally conscious," but at the same time, it wasn't too blatant or anything close to propaganda. There was also a couple of very subtle LGBT couples that you'd miss if you weren't paying attention, but as I ruled in my last video, I won't hold that against the film, especially considering how many couples were featured in this movie, and to their credit, it didn't really go any further than that. Okay, now let's talk about the plot twist and the inconsistencies throughout the movie. I originally thought that a jilted serial killer would have been super predictable and uninteresting, but the movie definitely subverted my expectations there, like I said before. Now that being said, this route that the writers went with made no fucking sense at all. I literally felt like Quagmire when he hopes his dad isn't gay, then he finds out he's trans and would actually rather him be gay. That's how I felt about this. I'm just going to read you guys a short list, quote unquote, a short list of valid inconsistencies I came up with regarding Shaw and David's ability to accomplish all of this throughout the movie. Shaw says that their original targets were Allie's ex and his girlfriend, but when they were stalking them going into the restaurant where they bumped into Allie and Jay, they both saw, not just one of them, they both saw Allie and Jay kiss. They then decided that that's when they wanted to shift their sights to Allie and Jay, so they basically know next to nothing about them, and Shaw also describes that it was herself in Allie's apartment when Hard Eyes attacked, but it was David who chased them out of the building and around the area and ambushed them at the police station. This mainly begs two questions. One, how the hell did they know where Allie lived? They had no clue who she was, and it's not like they followed her and Jay. The reason why brings me to my second question. Number two, how the hell did David and Shaw get to Allie's apartment so damn quickly? Because in order for Hard Eyes to get into Allie's closet, Shaw had to get there before Allie and Jay. We also find out that Shaw and Jay's initials match up, JS standing for Jay Simmons and Janine Shaw. So Shaw planted a wedding ring with those initials JS at the Vineyard murder site and used it to frame Jay. Again, they knew nothing about Jay, including his name, at the time of the Vineyard murders. She's just, I guess she's just extremely lucky is all I have to say. Furthermore, she also somehow knows where Jay was when the murders were committed in previous years, which, let's just break this down. Even a city cop wouldn't have access to that type of surveillance. That's number one. Number two, again, she knew nothing about him up until that night. And number three, she's also extremely lucky that Jay apparently actually was in the exact cities on the exact days of each murder as she suggested to him. Then I find it just extremely hard to believe that she actually is a cop. I mean, to be a detective, you have to serve as a patrol officer for quite a few years before you get a promotion. That would mean that she's been a cop for longer than she's been a killer. What makes this more weird is that while she's able to piece together that Jay doesn't have a single solid alibi, her own department can't piece together that she doesn't either. Side note, Shaw gives Allie the choice to shoot Jay, but she's standing right behind Jay in the line of fire. What the fuck? No cop with a badge and a gun in their right mind would put themselves in that position. So, I mean, literally all the major inconsistencies fall on Shaw mainly. And I mean, there's so many more inconsistencies that I haven't brought up, but they can easily be written off or argued against, so I just won't include them in this review. Next, I want to talk about just how dumb so many of the characters are. We've seen this a lot in horror movies. It's basically a stereotype, but this movie is just annoying. The newly engaged girl at the beginning of the movie falls down while running away from Hard Eyes, but instead of getting up and running again, she just lays there and answers a call from her dead fiance, which on the other line is just Hard Eyes, and then she just gets shot in the foot. Dumb. Then, when Hard Eyes attacks Allie and Jay in the apartment, they manage to tie a door shut, but they just sit there like they're in a bunker, safe from harm. Then Hard Eyes obviously just breaks the door down. Dumb. While running away from the apartment building, Jay yells, "Stop! Wait! Did you hear that?" And Allie says, "I don't hear anything." Then, to no one's surprise, Hard Eyes shows up and catches them. So there was just no reason and no explanation for the supposed sound that Jay heard. Dumb. While escaping from the police station, Jay saves Allie from getting hit by a truck, and while they're on the ground after he tackled her, they decide that it's just the perfect time for a kiss while Hard Eyes is actively pursuing them. Dumb. Then finally at the drive-in theater, while they're running, they once again just stop to try and figure out what weapon they can use. This time they were lucky enough that they had enough time to figure it out before Hard Eyes caught up to them, but still. Dumb. Okay, now I want to talk about the sound design of the movie. Bro, it's so over the top. It's definitely the loudest movie I've ever experienced in a movie theater. Before, it was the movie Dunkirk, and Civil War last year was pretty loud, but this movie just towers over those two in terms of decibels. Not only is the volume overwhelming, but just the sounds themselves are overwhelming. When the dude at the beginning proposes to his girlfriend, he put the ring inside of a strawberry, and when his girlfriend chewed it, she obviously had to spit it out and grab the ring from the chewed up strawberry, and the sounds are just like... Dude, it's fucking disgusting. Now, if a strawberry made that noise, just imagine how over the top the stabbing, the slashing, the crushing sounds were throughout the rest of the movie. It's painful. It's utterly painful. And speaking of sound design, there is so many unnecessary jump scares. I like jump scares that are A, real jump scares with actual implications in the plot, like when Hard Eyes killed this first victim in the movie, and B, a jump scare that has at least some rising suspense leading up to it, even though there's no implication in the plot, like when Abby is scared that Hard Eyes is in the police station, she's searching around, and then suddenly the records tech just busts through the door. But then there's a lot of completely unnecessary ones, like when Allie and Jay are at dinner and the champagne bottle popping, its cork made me jump. There was just literally no reason for it, and there were so many like this throughout the movie. And just to briefly wrap up what I was talking about earlier about how I dislike horror comedies, there's a few points in the movie when Allie and Jay escape from Hard Eyes and then just instantly relax as if none of that crazy stuff just happened, and then start getting into, lighthearted conversation and then start laughing with each other. It's like, dude, you just had a guy chasing after you. You've seen him slash people up. How are you not still freaking out? Oh my gosh. One of the worst parts of the horror comedy element is when it's actually revealed that David is Heart Eyes, and it's actually supposed to be funny, dude, because he's the loser IT guy that Allie rejected. People were literally laughing in the theater. No, that's not how this is supposed to go. Even for a horror comedy, the plot twist is supposed to be dramatic, not funny. There are other parts that contribute to this that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's plenty more where they throw comedy into intense and scary scenes, which, look, I understand that people like that sometimes. I personally think it really takes away from the horror element. Another thing too, Allie and Jay have blatant plot armor. Hard Eyes had plenty of opportunities to kill them both in Act 1 and 2, but just decides to ditch the weapons and go hands-on instead during certain parts. As for the dialogue is just a mess. Some of it's good, some of it's cringy, some of it's just unfunny. Some of it actually is funny though, and the rest is just dumb. They try to throw in some relatable Gen Z dialect, but dude, it's so cringy, and the snarkiness in many of the character lines in particular doesn't stick the landing. Okay, finally. That was the movie Hard Eyes. For the first time on this channel, for my final verdict, I will be ruling against the movie Hard Eyes with a score of 37%, not even because of the politics or because I particularly don't like horror comedies, but mainly because of the plot inconsistencies, dumb ass choices made by the characters, the underwhelming plot twist, and just borderline unconvincing character dialogue just all contribute to that. As for should you see this movie in theaters, no, because your ears are gonna fucking bleed more than Hard Eyes victims. Should you rent it? Only if you're a huge fan of horror comedy and don't care too much about continuity in storytelling. Should you watch it on streaming? Only if you want to watch a movie with your spouse that you can have sex with midway through and just forget about. Okay, but all jokes aside, if you guys liked my review and want to see more, hit that like and subscribe button. The next video is going to be my Captain America Brave New World review. That one's going to be a big one, like I said before, so look out for that. But that's all for this case. Court's adjourned.